I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
When someone approaches us excited to inform us that the ruins of Lemuria have been spotted in the deep sea off Big Sur or something like that, we would be able to respond to that with the contempt it deserves. I had a conversation about this recently with someone who, if I had to describe their job category, I would describe them as mafioso. And I said, what do you think of the abduction phenomenon? And without hesitation, this person said, there are just so many foolish people in the world. And to me, all of these things are intelligence tests. And the people who pass the intelligence test are not worrying about pro bono proctologists from other star systems showing up unannounced in their bedrooms. So, we have perfected politeness. We have perfected the ability to listen to damn foolishness without betraying by so much as the flick of an eyebrow that we realize what we're in the presence of. Now I think it's time to refine our mathematical skills, learn to think straight, and not be afraid to denounce the pernicious forms of foolishness which are vitiating the energies of our community and making us appear marginal and absurd in the discourse about truly transforming society.
That's when I thought of the principle of radio broadcasting. You've got this carrier wave, which goes out more or less steady. And then you modulate so that someone can receive the carrier waves and interpret the modulation and deliver a meaning.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of NEUROBLAST Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Dawson, and I'm so thrilled that you all enjoyed that first episode. We got to cover some amazing topics that we will be going back over, and we will be utilizing and building off of on each episode. So what we're trying to do right now is lay out some framework, and then we're going to build a house of neuroplasticity in which we can walk around in and find different subjects and be able to share what we know with each other on those particular subjects. So, with no further ado, thank you so much. And I really appreciate each and every one of you taking time out of your day to not only listen to what I have to say, but to be curious enough, to be interested enough in your own life and the quality in which you're living. And how serious do you take that? Serious enough that you're going to listen to this podcast right now. And I promise you, you don't have to absorb everything I say. Okay, the purpose is not to turn you into a neuroscientist today. Okay, I want to make sure that that is very clear, and we are going to hit the main topics. We're going to dive straight into the main topics and decipher those top issues of neuroscience on this podcast. Okay, so we're not going to dive into the neurodynamics of the chemistry and the biochemistry, even though some of you may love to talk about those things, and I would love to have that conversation with you sometime. That is not the time or place for this right now. So, we're going to get into a little bit of what is the fear that we were talking about last time, and where are the origins of this central process that's so innate to us? So innate to us. It is actually what makes us us. Isn't that interesting? That we have to focus on being loving because our innate instinct is to fear. It's twice as hard as work to be a loving person as it is to be a fearful person. But the loving people are the ones that create the abundance for themselves in their life. You've seen this. We all probably know that person that was outgoing and that somehow, some way always seemed to know everybody and talk to everybody, and they're just full of life and very successful. We've seen that. And it's very important. It's so crucial that whenever we are talking about things like love and fear, that we actually put those into quantifiable scientific measurements. Where can we see these types of emotions in the body? Now, it's not quite as simple as just one spot equals love and one spot equals fear. And, if you tickle that little part of the brain, then that's going to make that person a little bit more lovey that day. Or maybe that's going to make them a little bit more grumpy that day. No, that's not how it works. But in some cases, it does. That's why things like blood sugar and our diet and our exercise and our sleep quality and our outlook and our perspective, those things weigh on our current body. So a lot of us might say, we get stuck in those cycles, like we talked about on the last show, getting stuck into the cycles, getting stuck into addictions. And the fear of not being able to step out of that is kind of the first thing that you get into. And it's like, okay, I need to do this right now. This is something that I just have to get done. And then that becomes something you kind of get used to because it feels safe. You're no longer on that frontier. You're no longer on your bubble. You're no longer on the edge of your comfort zone. That's what they're talking about when people say life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. Because curiosity begins at the edge of what you know. And that's exactly where fear meets you. Don't be afraid of fear. Don't be afraid of curiosity. In some situations, in almost all situations, it means you're about to learn something completely new. So the reason that we're always looking, we're always bringing in the sensory information from our environment. We have billions of neurons with free nerve endings all over our skin that can detect the slightest change in temperature and the slightest change in wind. We can feel what's going on around us. We can see what's going on around us with some of the most precise neural networks between the ocular cortex and the optic nerve itself. And our ability to integrate that with our own thoughts and our past and present experiences, and even our ability to envision the future based on where we're currently at and what we've been through. And to not only do that, but to take it one step further and make that vision your reality. Because that's what this is about. That's what this whole broadcast is about, is neuroplasticity, getting out of our cycles, living on that edge of fear and exploration, but knowing that that edge is where you're going to meet your destiny. That's where you're going to walk down that cave and step into that cave of darkness. And it's scary and it's cold and it's dark. And you want to turn around. But just a little bit deeper in that cave, you take a few more steps And right when it seems that all the light has turned out and you've lost all hope and you've gone too far into the darkness, that you find the treasure. The treasure chest appears. And what you sought out your entire life was really right in front of you, just waiting for you to step into that cave and step into that situation and share your true abundance and your true beauty with the world. That's why we're all here. Now, I know we all see the world through different lenses, but I truly believe, and we talked about this last time, that we all have something special to offer those people, and to offer ourselves, and to offer everyone, to offer future generations at least, by cleaning up after ourselves and at least not leaving a mess for future generations. That's part of our brain health too, is the direct reflection of how our planet is, how its health is functioning. Take the planet's temperature. Is it getting warmer? The water level's going up. The CO2 levels are going up. There's plastic collecting in the oceans. Now, this isn't a broadcast talking about all the troubles of the world, but it's particularly interesting the timing in which this great awakening is happening, in synchronicity with our ability to catch ourselves and use our technology to grow into the next level, an evolutionary level of consciousness that is the planetary species that becomes this global, beautiful, multicultural species, then begins to contemplate inhabiting the cosmos and using our technology with free will. We have the resources here on our planet to be able to go anywhere we need to go. And we have the resources on our planet and the minds on our planet, if we set those free, to be able to make this world even more beautiful than it is right now. Even more beautiful than it was whenever we began the Industrial Revolution. We can make this world the most beautiful place it's ever been, because we can help consciously every other thing thrive. And in doing so, we're going to help ourselves thrive. And there's a certain respect that gives back with nature there. I don't think it's coincidence that our technology has progressed. We had to go through the wars in order to get some of this technology. We had to go through mining coal and using oil in order to get to the technologically advanced stage we are now. But that doesn't mean we stay and we hold on to those old ideas and keep those old things alive. When we went through all of that just to get to here, to know what we know now, and to not let our past as a group and as a collective hold us down, and not let our past as an individual hold us down. We all have a nucleus of cells on both sides of our brain, located right next to what's called the hippocampus, a very, very special part of our brain associated with emotions and memory that we will talk about on another episode. But located right next to this, in a primary region of the brain that receives information from the body through the thalamus, from your higher cortex, coming from the cerebral cortex down into these nuclei. And also it can receive information and stimuli from the hippocampus itself, from our memories. This bundle of nuclei are called the amygdala, which stands for almond-shaped because anatomists love to name features of the body either after themselves or some kind of shape in nature. So we have the amygdala, which is shaped like an almond, and we have the pineal gland, which is shaped like a pine cone. There's starting to be a little bit of a repetitious cycle going on here, and our ability to correlate the earth and our environment back into ourself. And we're going full circle here. The amygdala is a highly active group of nuclei in the anterior part of the cingulate region, located in the temporal area of your brain, the temporal lobe, also a part of what's called the limbic system, which is obviously in control of our emotions. Now we see this area of the brain light up on functional MRIs, on different forms of scaffolding the brain, and looking and seeing which parts of the brain are highly active during certain experiences. And we look and see that people that have been through traumatic events have overactive amygdala nuclei, meaning that there's too much blood flow in that portion of the brain, meaning that the pathways are being overutilized. That means that it doesn't take as much stimuli to cause that threshold to advance and cause a reaction. Now, a lot of these neurons inside of the amygdala and in the hippocampus are regulated through serotonin. And it's thought to be the serotonin 2A receptors. And these receptors are also the ones utilized during drug experiences like the ones you might experience, or people that experience that are taking antidepressants, things like Zoloft. And also psychedelic experiences, whether that be drug-induced itself from a plant medicine or from some sort of meditation, because we can and we do induce visionary and psychedelic states by activating different frequencies and pathways inside of our brain. That's what those are. Those are experiences taking place inside of our brain using new pathways that we normally wouldn't use. So it feels foreign, it feels like a different level of consciousness, but it's all happening within you. Almost like every single movie you've ever watched, every feeling you ever had when Batman saved those children on the school bus from the Joker. That feeling was in you. You were Batman. You had that feeling about yourself. You had this experience. The movie caused a biochemical reaction within you. You thought you were observing it, but your brain is recording all of this, making you you. You can't tell me that the movies that we watch and the things that we put into our mind and the marketing that we're around, this is visual stimulation. Not to mention audio stimulation. We talked about how the amygdala is located in the temporal lobe. So audio sound and signaling goes straight in there. And what does the amygdala do? Well, it stimulates this autonomic system called the sympathetic fight or flight response system. Fear. This area of the brain, as soon as we receive any stimuli, say from the thalamus, from the body, maybe we felt something brush up against our skin, our hair's raised up. Whew. Wow, so quick. That fight or flight response was quickly promoted down through the cortex through the thalamus and out through your spinal cord, through the sympathetic chain ganglion in the thoracic spine. But it was initiated in the amygdala. And we've seen this. And we know that this area of the brain is highly overactive in people with chronic depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and many, many other of the diseases that are associated with mental health. We also know that overstimulation of the amygdala through scientific evidence and research, overstimulation and excitation of this area of the brain causes people to be more fearful, and when they're in this mind state, they're less observant. This is the area of the brain that whenever it gets excited to a certain degree, and this has been shown in studies on mice, to cause the freeze reaction where you can't even move. So how do we retrace this? How do we cause neuroplasticity in something that's innate, like something that's built into what we are as humans? We look for danger. We have to. To survive, we had to. Well, we have to look for danger in the right places. So many of us waste our time looking for danger in places that aren't imaginative, things that we make up. And it's so hard to distinguish until years later when you're having that reflection with yourself and you're like, wow, why did I spend so much time worried about that particular thing? It never served me, but what I learned from going through that does serve me, and I'm going to take what I can learn from that and apply it right now, and that way we can continue to grow and move forward. That growth is exponential. There's a certain time and a certain rate in which you keep studying, you keep learning, and you put all the things together, and it skyrockets you to the next level. You just have to keep learning. Our brains will naturally be able to put together and articulate all these different thoughts if we try new things and we get it good at doing different things. That's what neuroplasticity is. Taking on a new language, taking on a new physical activity. Maybe instead of going to the gym, maybe go for a hike. Maybe go and do some rock climbing. Take on a new type of martial arts. Then go to draw or paint or pick up an instrument. And by doing these different activities throughout the day, in combination with physical activity, in combination with mindfulness and a 30-minute meditation of reflection and gratitude just once in your day, has been shown to have incredible and undeniable benefits for not only building neuroplasticity in the brain and reshaping and recalibrating our brain, supporting pathways with the diet, looking for deficiencies in our lab chemistry, being mindful of how we're moving and how we're providing oxygen and nutrients to the brain. Motion and breathing is how the brain gets 95% of its nutrients, is through motion and the breathing. So we have to take into account breath work, we have to take into account body work, we have to look at the structure in which our body is encasing our nervous system, so that if there is any disruptions in how we are taking in information from the outside world, or what we plan to do with our decisions once we send that information back down through the spinal cord and out with our actions, how is that going to be fully optimized? The only point in being conscious is to have full optimization of our mind. without full optimization of our thoughts and our mind, we're never going to be accomplishing our dreams. We'll never be able to accomplish our collective goals and save the planet from ourselves. But those are all negatives. Think about the upside of a collective consciousness of beings that we're all consciously living together in harmony. And you say, well, how can we do that? We have these areas of our brains that just hold on to memories. Dr. Dawson, you even said that the amygdala is directly connected. The pathways between the amygdala, and the cortex, and the thalamus, and the hippocampus. How can we rewire that after years and years of using the same things? Well, it takes practice. And it's kind of like if you had a certain sound stimuli and there was a shock with that every single time. Bzz, shocked you. Bzz, every single time. And that sound went off, you got shocked. After a while, you would start to realize, and your brain would directly associate those fluctuations in the neurons that you're receiving your information from the shock with the sound coming in from the temporal lobe, and it all connects right there in the amygdala, creating a fear response. After a while, you could just hear the sound and it would initiate the fear response within the amygdala even without the shock. But over time, if you keep hearing it, it's almost like you get desensitized. It's like, okay, wait, there was no shock. I can still hear the sound, but there's no shock. We just have to let ourselves get through that initial phase and start to relearn. And it's excellent to have a catapult. One of the studies that I would like to share with you here is a study on psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms that has been studied at Johns Hopkins University, UCLA, the Hefter Institute, and many more universities and institutions around the world are starting to look into the amazing, amazing abilities that psilocybin has on the brain. And not only what it directly has on the brain, but what we're able to learn from watching it. So psilocybin, this active ingredient, actually goes in and causes a decrease in blood flow and a decrease in excitation, where it causes inhibitory response in the amygdala itself, this fear-based center. It downregulates our fear-based center, opening us up to a more childlike mindset of exploration and learning and receiving information and looking at old problems from a new perspective, taking new pathways, neuroplasticity. And if you look at the scaffolding on these two images that I'm showing right now, you can see that the one on the left, placebo, and the one on the right was the post-psilocybin group. The difference, the highly connectedness, because psilocybin's ability to downregulate areas of the brain, such as the amygdala and the posterior cingulate cortex, which has been highly correlated with what's called our default mode network, or the DMN, not the DMV, even though things do tend to get caught up there a lot, like the DMV. I don't wish you guys those lines for anything. I hope next time you go to the DMV, it's easy. Be sure to register online. But we're going to get back to the default mode network. This is located in the posterior cingulate cortex, and it's highly regulated, and the pathway is highly connected with the amygdala. And this is our area of the brain that's our everyday, mundane way of thinking. This is what allows us to go through the motions. This is what allows you to drive to work without really thinking about it. So you get to work and you're like, how did I get there? Well, it's because you were thinking about all the other things, and your default mode network was highly active while you were driving. Our brains have the amazing ability to use what's called the basal ganglia to change and to articulate our movements and our thoughts all together. It's a beautifully constructed machine. I love studying the brain. And by looking at this functional imaging that we see when people have taken psilocybin that have been previously diagnosed with overactive amygdala and post-traumatic stress disorder in some of these soldiers and firefighters and policemen, that this isn't a type of drug where you take every day and hope that it down-regulates the amygdala every single day. Instead, what it is an experience that you partake in, and based on this clinical research in the study, they did 3 different sessions over the course of a year. So you have 3 different stimuli and 3 different sessions where these people go underneath this drug that down-regulates their amygdala and allows them to get outside their head and allows them to get out of that experience for a little while so that they can grow, have a fresh breath, and take a new perspective on where they're at in life. And by doing that in a proper sequence and frequency throughout the year, almost 85% of the people in the study that were previously diagnosed with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder had no longer qualified to be diagnosed with PTSD. And their functional imaging had proven also that the area of their brain known as the amygdala was not as heightened. And so by down-regulating this area, by down-regulating the posterior cingulate cortex, this allows free range and opens up more hubs in the brain instead of sending all of our information through just a set number of networks that we constantly use over and over again. That's why it feels like we're stuck in the same way of thinking. That grip lets go. And now the brain has free range to think, and you can reach back and grab old thoughts and old ideas and apply them to new techniques and new things that you're doing in life. And that's what neuroplasticity is. In order to grow our brains, we literally have to have techniques built in that in our society and in our independent lives that's going to help us get rid of old traumas and get back to living in the present moment and using our conscious awareness and this amazing cerebral cortex that we have to integrate the information that we're bringing in through the body, up through the thalamus, up through our spinal cord, making sure that every signal that we get from our brain is clear. And we're receiving that information from the body into the brain the way we're supposed to, and that takes proper spinal dynamics. And then integrating that system with a healthy, oxygenated, fully functional brain that's recovered, maybe from past traumas, emotional or physical. Concussions, we will have discussion on concussions. But the trauma and the brain damage from concussions is highly correlated with the frustration and the overactivation of the trauma stored in those cells and those nuclei in the amygdala, and their ability to communicate with the hippocampus and our memory centers of the brain. So thank you so much for listening to this today. For the amygdala is where we're at now, and as a scientist, I never want to make anyone think that I know it all. That's the best part about science, is that we're constantly challenging our own ideas and looking for the correct answers, and we get to something that makes sense and we test it. And that's what we're doing. And we're seeing that the test results are actually coming back positive for ancient healing techniques that were used for thousands of years that help bring us to consciousness that we've forgotten. and now are starting to come back as the world wakes up, as the internet has spread, as the world has become sick and people in it have become sick. Now, we had to go through the wars in order to get some of this technology. We had to go through those pains in order to learn who we are. But now it's time to let it go. It's time to let our individual past go that's holding us back and use what we've learned from those situations to better our current situation. And that's what we have to do as a collective as well. We have to downregulate our amygdalas. We have to downregulate our overexcitation of fear. Even though fear is what we are, it's what allowed us to get this far. We have to work twice as hard to love. And that's why the people that work twice as hard to love have the abundance and have the ability to affect other people in different ways that people that are stuck in negative, amygdala-based fear mindsets, they'll never be able to see. It's not that they can't do that themselves, they just don't have the circuitry to take that pathway yet. So I would love the opportunity to work with any of us on this. As I am being mentored right now, I am being challenged every single day with different types of exercises, whether that's physical or cognitive or social, talking to different coaches and mentors that I have. And I think it's absolutely crucial that we use this knowledge and this power and this teamwork in order to grow our society and grow our own lives and our own families, and the love that we can show our families and our friends and our communities and our spouses and everybody in it. We create our abundance. Stop feeling sorry for ourselves and use this amazing experience that we have in front of us to let the world know all the beauty that radiates from those things that you had in your life and where that brought you. I'm so proud of you. I love each and every one of you. I know that we've all been through our fair share of trials and tribulations, but it's okay. And this is a story about redemption. And our brain has the ability to heal itself. That's one of the most amazing parts about our body, is its innate ability to heal itself. It wants to heal itself. Just like a seedling knows to become a tree, just like when you have a cut or a scrape on your skin, how the inflammatory cascade happens. Yes, we can look at those chemicals, we can look at those things and observe it. But the dynamic and the frequency in which those systems, your immune system, your nervous system, your integumentary system, all work and coincide together and communicate together in order to heal your body perfectly, even sometimes stronger than before, is something that's amazing. And we have to use this to our advantage. We have to wake up our brothers and sisters that are sick and stuck in these cycles and begin to shake the fear, get outside of our comfort zone, and hold each other's hands as we explore into the cosmos and continue to grow together. Thank you so much for listening to episode 2 of the NeuroBlast Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Dawson. I have faith that you really got something from this today, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Have an absolutely amazing day.